Hey everybody, Lonny with Gateway Classic Mustang, Gateway Performance Suspension. I want to talk to you a little bit about torque boxes. From the beginning, all the vintage Mustangs that were convertibles had a torque box, a front torque box. All of them had rear torque boxes. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was penny pinchers or just didn't think they needed them with a roof on them, 65 and 6 coupes and fastbacks did not come with front torque boxes at all. In 1967, when they re-engineered the car to accept a big block, they added one to the left-hand side of the coupes and fastbacks. I'm guessing that was for torque of the engine. By 1968, they put them on both sides. This is really a key feature in rigidity of the chassis and the unibody. So anytime we're not doing a concourse build, especially if somebody's going to performance drive one of the earlier cars, the 65s and 66s, we go ahead and add torque boxes on both sides, and on the 67s we'll go ahead and add the right hand side as well. So we've got this 66 ready to install a torque box. Just kind of wanted to give you a quick explanation of the torque boxes, what they do, kind of show you how they go in, and then we're going to do a video while we're actually putting those in a time-lapse video so you can kind of see how it all goes together and what it should look like when it's done. So right here is the area that the torque box lives in. You can see right now that the front frame rail just comes back, ties into the firewall, and it doesn't tie into the rocker at all. So the only thing that's kind of keeping your engine bay attached to your car is the sheet metal of the firewall. So if you're performance driving, you add bigger brakes, bigger wheels, bigger tires, stuff like that, you're going to get a lot of flex up here. Front end's going to move around a lot. It's not going to handle like it should. In an accident, it's not going to crash as well as a car with torque boxes in it. This will be more apt to be able to move into the interior area with you rather than making all the crumple zones and everything work really, really well. So basically the torque box, if you look at it, when it's assembled, it's a giant triangle. We know that triangles and arches are the strongest geometric shapes. So basically, this is the top, and that's going to fit up inside of there like that against the firewall. You have to do a little trimming and fitting to make that fit. Once that's installed, then the bottom piece is going to go on in this area, and that will box that in. What that's also going to do, it's tying this front frame rail into the rocker, and then once you've got that in there, you've basically got a perimeter frame because you're coming from the frame over to the rocker, back to the rear torque box, and through the frame rail. So it gives it a perimeter frame, makes the car a lot more rigid, really helps in performance if you're doing like autocross or road course racing where you're really trying to throw the car around. The front end doesn't move nearly as much. And again, a little bit safer in a crash because it's going to hold this frame rail in place and let the crumple zones work correctly instead of just trying to push back the firewall. So as you can see, we've gone in here and done a bunch of prep work. We've cleaned all the overspray and old paint and stuff off. You can also see there's a lip on the torque box that actually we have to cut a slot here so that that can slide up inside. The later cars had that made into the firewall. But so the easiest thing to do is drill a hole at the top and the bottom, cut that out with an air saw or a cutoff wheel or something, and then that tab can slide up inside of there. Also, the other thing that we're going to do, and you'll see that as we actually show you the installation video, is there's a section of the frame rail here from the factory. This would have been put on before the firewall went in, so this would have been sandwiched between this plate and this plate. So what we do to compensate for that is we just go ahead and notch this out around that frame section and then just seam weld it around there. So like I said, you'll see that as we're showing you the assembly, the time lapse and all that stuff. But just wanted to point out a couple of things. You need to make sure that you can see this pinch weld is bent up. We're going to have to straighten that and clean that area as well because the lower section will weld to that. If you want to, you can kind of pretty well see how that looks before the torque box has been installed. We've already done the driver's side, so I can take a look over there, show you what that kind of looks like. There we have the complete installed torque box. You can see now how that really ties this inner frame rail to the rocker and makes this this whole front end much stronger, much tighter. Not going to get that flex out of the firewall like we did from the factory. So we're going to get going on the other side. All right, so once again, this is the top of the torque box, and you can see here where we've marked out with a Sharpie the area that we need to trim out so that it clears this tab. And also this is a little bit too wide to fit in here, so we're trimming a little bit of width off of it. Again, from the factory it would have sat on top of that frame rail, so the width wouldn't be affected. But we have to trim it down just a little bit, so we'll cut that out, show you what that looks like in just a second. All right, so if you look up in here, you can see now that we have the top of the torque box is installed, welded in. We leave this section of the torque box loose until we get the bottom in so that we can adjust this front to back. But you can see it's all welded in. We've ground off our welds up here at the top. Really don't need to do these because they're not affecting anything, then that way we're not weakening any. You can see here where we cut our patch out and then we welded that. So we are at this point ready to put the lower half in. Again, you can see where we've done all of our holes for rosette welding. We actually flatten this flange out a little bit because typically it's a little winged out this way, so we try to knock it back this way. We'll get it up in there, get the thing all screwed in place, clamped in place, and then we'll hammer this over so it's good and tight against the frame rail right here. You'll notice there's an oval hole there. It comes stamped from the factory. Do not weld that. That is where your splash apron is going to screw through. And then on the later cars actually have a bracket there that goes to the bottom of the fender here. So, so we're going to pop this up in there now, get it screwed and clamped into place, and we'll show you what that looks like. All right, so you can see we've got the bottom part installed now. It's all welded in, welds are ground down. One thing back here on this back edge where you're putting the top and the bottom panel together, we'll kind of clamp these. Don't clamp them really tight with a pair of vice grips, but clamp them enough that you can drive the top panel back and make this pretty well line up. And then we'll come back and actually trim those to match so that they're, you know, there's no overhanging top to bottom. They'll be perfectly matched. And so basically now we're down to the last little piece. These didn't appear until the 68 model, but it's just another triangular part that helps tie stuff in and makes it better. So the aftermarket torque boxes are coming with these. It's a good idea to go ahead and install these too. Just like I said, just makes it a little more rigid. So basically this just kind of goes up in here. You can see that it doesn't fit perfect. What we like to do is get it positioned where we want it. We'll clamp it in a couple of places, maybe shoot a screw or two, and then as you're welding it in with the heat of the welds, you can start manipulating it and kind of knock it around and get it to fit really well. And we'll kind of show you that as we're going through actually installing that. So that's our next step. All right, so as you can see, we've got our corner brace in now. So this torque box is completely installed. Everything's welded, everything's ground down. At this point, basically, we will go back and scuff this up and kind of try to match the original paint. We'll do some red oxide under here on this particular car, do some black and a little bit of undercoating. But basically, hope this helps you if you're needing to install torque boxes in a vehicle. There you have it.